From Slate.com, Brandon Garrett writes, "You don't have the right to remain silent. The Supreme Court's terrible and dangerous ruling this week on the Fifth Amendment." Yeah. On Monday, in a case called Salinas versus Texas that hasn't gotten the attention it deserves, surprise, surprise, the Supreme Court held that you remain silent at your peril. The court said that this is true even before you're arrested, when the police are just informally asking questions. The court's move to cut off the right to remain silent is wrong and also dangerous because it encourages the kind of high-pressure questioning that can elicit false confessions. Now, what is the right to remain silent? It's really simple. They can't criminally punish you for not speaking. They can't criminally punish you for not doing something, for not answering questions. They can't physically compel you to speak. Surprise, surprise. And it's sort of like the most obvious of natural rights, right? You have the right to remain silent, which is the sort of natural corollary to, it's wrong for someone to point a gun at you and say, if you don't tell us what we want to know, we're going to shoot you or threaten you with force, because it's just so unviable. I mean, if you carry that assertion to its logical or illogical conclusions, you end up in a very, very dangerous world. And we're already rapidly approaching that status with the police state if we're not already there. So this kind of dances around the edges of this, because it can't say that you don't have a right to remain silent, but what it does do in a way is assert that you can be punished simply for remaining silent. And it's so ironic to hear people, especially people like me who support gay rights, say, "Oh yeah, go Supreme Court, they overturned DOMA." Yeah, last week, motherfuckers, they just gutted your rights under the Fifth Amendment, your right to remain silent. They approved the government spying on you and have done everything else to get us to this point in jurisprudence and set legal precedent that basically says the government owns you. And you want to thank the Supreme Court because they included gay marriages in the, list of people who have special privileges as legally officially married and fuck single people. So anyways, by the way, I found a great website yesterday that I just have to share on the podcast as well, because I posted this to Facebook, and let's see if I can find this, about seeking equality for people who are single, and it's about equality for all people, because what marriage licensing does is take away the true freedom that you have in association, saying that if your association with another person is deemed legally approved, then you get special privileges. So it's unmarried.org. Standing up for fairness and equal treatment of all people regardless of marital status. I hope people check that out. But anyways, here are the facts from Salinas. 2 brothers were shot at home in Houston. There were no witnesses, only shotgun shell casings left at the scene. Genovivo Salinas had been at a party at that house the night before the shooting, and police invited him down to the station where they talked for an hour. They did not arrest him or read him his Miranda warnings. Salinas agreed to give the police his shotgun for testing. Then the cops asked whether the gun would match the shells from the scene of the murder. According to the police, Salinas stopped talking, shuffled his feet, bit his lip, and started to tighten up. Well, geez, that was your second mistake. The first one was responding to them in the first place. Now, the only way you would do this, or the only reason you would ever do this, is if you specifically want the police to take an action. If you know that someone was killed and you want to help them, sure, there are times when that makes sense. But if you're just being questioned and you're not going for that specific purpose, don't go. You have no obligation until they arrest you, until they say you are being detained, or you are indicted, or there's a subpoena, or whatever legal compelling of you is put on paper, and they have an excuse to detain you for questioning. And even then, you have the right to remain silent. You don't have any obligation to help, cooperate, or talk to the police in any way whatsoever. At trial, Salinas did not testify, but prosecutors described his reportedly uncomfortable reaction to the question about a shotgun. Salinas argued this violated his Fifth Amendment rights. He had remained silent, and the Supreme Court had previously made clear that prosecutors can't bring up a defendant's refusal to answer the state's questions. This time around, however, Justice Samuel Alito blithely responded that Salinas was free to leave and did not assert his right to remain silent. He was silent. So if you don't say, I have a right to remain silent now, you don't have the right to remain silent. That's what, it's nibbling around the edges, but that's the fucked up state they're coming to. It's like, I don't have a right to freedom of speech unless I say, I invoke my freedom of speech. Fuck you, Mr. President. But if I just say, fuck you, Mr. President, I might get a call from the Secret Service, which I'm going to probably get again anyways. Yes, I've been called by the Secret Service. And they actually asked to question me, and I declined. This time around, but somehow, without a lawyer and without being told his rights, he should have affirmatively invoked his right to not answer questions. 2 other justices signed on to Alito's opinion. Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Antonin Scalia joined the judgment for a different reason. They think Salinas had no rights at all to invoke before his arrest. They also object to Miranda itself. The upshot is another terrible Roberts Court ruling on confessions. And what this really means is that a cop can needle you, can prod you, can ask you a question and say, oh, that question made him uncomfortable. Well, no shit. If you ask the average person, hey, did you murder somebody? Hey, do you still beat your wife? Might make them a little uncomfortable. Well, now, according to the Supreme Court, that reaction to that questioning, even if you choose to remain silent, can be used against you. In 2010, the court held that a suspect did not sufficiently invoke the right to remain silent when he stubbornly refused to talk after receiving his Miranda warnings during 2 hours of questioning. Now people have to somehow invoke the right to remain silent even when they're not formal suspects and they haven't been read their Miranda warnings. As Oren Kerr points out in The Volokh Conspiracy, this just isn't realistic. The court's ruling in Salinas is all the more troubling because during such informal, undocumented, and unregulated questioning, there are special dangers that police may, intentionally or not, coax false confessions from innocent suspects. Oh, special dangers. You mean a long track record of police intimidating people and actually getting false confessions. I have spent years studying cases of people exonerated by DNA testing. A large group of those innocent people falsely confessed, and many supposedly admitted their guilt even before any formal interrogation. The police state picks on the dumb and helpless. Take the case of Nicholas Yaris, who was exonerated by DNA testing in 2003 after 20 years in prison. He had been convicted and sentenced to death in Pennsylvania for the murder of a woman found raped, beaten, and stabbed near her abandoned Chrysler Cordoba. When informally questioned, police said Yaris volunteered that he knew the victim had been raped and that the victim's Chrysler had a brown Landau roof, a vinyl fake convertible look. I didn't know that's what that was called. Landau. Meh. That was a striking detail, especially since the police had kept it out of the press. No tape was made of the interrogation. The police didn't even produce notes. And now that DNA has cleared Yaris, we know that his confession was false and that he must not have volunteered the fact about the car roof at all. But they can use that one little mistake in the paperwork to fuck you. To kill you in a state with capital punishment. This is how the police kill people. The Supreme Court's decision in Salinas encourages the kind of loosey-goosey and easily contaminated police questioning that led to Yaris' wrongful conviction. Salinas may very well have been guilty of the 2 murders, but in many cases, as in this one, there are no eyewitnesses and not much other evidence of guilt. That is why the police may desperately need a confession, and that makes it crucial for them to handle interrogations and confessions with the utmost care. The court appreciated none of the pressures police face and how they can squeeze an innocent suspect. Alito and the other conservatives were not troubled that there was no video to confirm that Salinas was in fact uncomfortable as well as silent. If Salinas had answered the question by exclaiming that he was innocent, could police have reported that he sounded desperate and like a liar? The court's new ruling puts the defendant in an impossible predicament. He must either answer the question or remain silent. Justice Stephen Breyer said in dissent, joined by the other 3 liberal moderates, quote, if he answers the question, he may well reveal, for example, prejudicial facts, disreputable associates, or suspicious circumstances, even if he is innocent. But if he doesn't answer at trial, police and prosecutors can now take advantage of his silence, or perhaps even of just pausing or fidgeting. Questions first, rights later is the approach the court's majority now endorses, and by giving the police more incentive to ask questions informally, the new ruling will also undermine the key reform that police have adopted to prevent false questions, videotaping entire interrogations. Why not try to trap a suspect before the camera starts rolling? In only a few cases, like Yaris's, will there be DNA to test. The likely result of the court's embrace of shoddy interrogation tactics? More wrongful convictions. But you can still protect yourself by knowing and asserting your right to remain silent, because they can never take that away from you.
Sir, this is your last order.
Don't take pictures.
Whoa! Hey!
And this is Law and Order.